Since the first man-made nuclear blast in July 1945, scientists have chronicled the devastating effects of an atomic explosion. The evidence now indicates that a nuclear explosion may have occurred on Earth as early as 1908. In an age when satellites have become commonplace in the heavens above Earth, it is possible to conceive of another civilization sending a distant probe to our planet. There is a startling theory that such a probe may have arrived on Earth just after the turn of the century, and that it was programmed to land in the vast open spaces of Siberia. In the 4 million square miles of Siberian tundra, there are only a handful of population centers. For the most part, it is a land that nature has forsaken. A layer of permafrost descending 1,000 feet below the surface makes farming virtually impossible. The barren land supports very little animal life and only a small, hardy population. The lives of the people have changed little over the hundreds of years. The stories they tell of their past are simple tales whose origins can easily be traced. The traders in Vanavara, a tiny hamlet 3,000 miles east of Moscow, maintain a legend, however, that has puzzled scientists for 80 years. They say that a bluish, cylindrically shaped object came hurtling in from outer space. It was the morning of June 30th, 1908. At precisely 7:17, the object exploded. The story of that explosion has been passed down through a generation to people who remember it today. Dorothy Raisonen's parents witnessed the explosion.
There was this big boom. They couldn't see, and the earth shook under them, and of course they all fell down and prayed and cried, you know, and just children got hysterical. The sky turned kind of a dirty orange, a haze got in there.
Technical journals and daily newspapers as far away as California reported that dirty haze seemed to settle on the horizon following the explosion. The blast that occurred in Tunguska was so intense that it knocked people off their feet, 200 miles from the blast site. Amazingly, however, there was not one human fatality. Whatever the object was, it struck in Tunguska in the middle of a swamp. What it was, or how it could have caused such massive destruction, remained a mystery. Barographs, a primitive form of seismic recorder, mechanically measured the magnitude of the explosion as far away as London and Washington, D.C., but they in no way adequately communicated the intensity of the event. Nor did the brilliant sunsets, which painted the skies for several days after the explosion. The first successful scientific expedition into Tunguska was not launched until 19 years after the explosion. In 1927, a young Russian meteorologist, Leonid Kulik, set out to prove that the massive destruction was caused by a meteor colliding with the Earth. Kulik's theory was fully accepted at the time as being perfectly logical. After carefully studying the work done by Kulik and other Soviet scientists, a book was authored on the subject by Thomas Atkins.
And also by using some information that he had acquired from a seismic station, an earthquake station in Irkutsk, in southern Siberia. He manages to locate, after a rather long and arduous expedition, the the fall point or epicenter of the explosion. What he finds is a shattered forest. The extent of the destruction that lay before him was mind-boggling. He got up on a high ridge and looked out for 10 or 12 miles. And as far as he could see, toward the north, every single visible tree had been knocked down. He gets to the center of this destroyed forest, and he finds not a crater, but something far stranger and something for which he had no explanation. He found a forest that was still upright, a dead forest.
It was here, in the very epicenter of the blast, that Kulik expected to find the same sort of crater that was gouged into the Arizona landscape 50,000 years ago by a giant meteor. "4,000 feet in diameter and 600 feet deep, the Arizona crater has resisted forces of rain and wind to remain virtually unchanged." If a similar type of meteor had crashed in Siberia, then logically it should have left just such a crater. But it did not. That fact has sparked the controversy over the origins of the Tunguska explosion, which continues today. The information on Tunguska is still being cataloged and analyzed. Some modern-day astronomers believe, however, that Kulik was on the right track. They maintain that a crumbly sort of meteorite, a carbonaceous chondrite, was responsible for the explosion.
If we have a carbonaceous chondrite that is 40 or 50 feet in diameter, that's a huge object. What happened at Tunguska...
Ronald Oriti, who supports the meteor theory, is an associate lecturer at Griffith Park Observatory.
It would probably totally disrupt in the atmosphere at an altitude of anywhere from 5 to 10 or 15 miles above the Earth. The energy that it releases at that time is the same energy that would be released by a much stronger object, an iron object, of the same mass upon striking the Earth. So what we find with Tunguska is that we can entirely account for what took place if we have a very soft and crumbly meteorite that explodes in the atmosphere.